Welcome to Pima Community College and this very important event. The college is really deeply honored to have been chosen by the local chapter of the NAACP to be the first site of a dialogue about an issue of national consequence. Today's community conversation, as you know, could not have taken place without a lot of conversation, collaboration, and cooperation by several groups and individuals. So please let's thank them individually. First is Donna Liggins of the Tucson chapter of the NAACP. Next, Ruben Reyes and Clara Ortiz from the Representative Raul Grijalva's office. Next, our friends at the Center for Community Dialogue, which train the facilitators who will help with the conversations at each table, and 4 of those are PCC employees. Please stand. And of course, to Maria Moore, who you just met, Program Director of African American Student Affairs at the University of Arizona. Veronica Elias and Donna Martinez of Pima's Office of Government Relations. Vice Chancellor for Public Information and Government Relations, C.J. Karamarjan, and his entire team. Where are you, C.J.? And finally, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Clarence Boykins. As many of you know, Clarence is a newspaper publisher as well as the president and CEO of the Tucson Southern Arizona Black Chamber of Commerce. This event was his idea. It grew out of conversations that Clarence and I had, and Clarence had with Raul Grijalva and his team earlier this year. If any good can come out of the Florida tragedy, let it be events such as this. Open, honest conversations that can result in increased understanding and harmony in our community. Now it is my honor to introduce Representative Raul Grijalva. Representative Grijalva's commitment to the people of Tucson and Pima County has spanned, as you know, 5 decades. He has been a tireless, he's going to get me for that one, isn't he? He's been yes, he was 12 at the time he started. He's been a tireless advocate for adult education, workforce development, affordable health care, and many, many other important issues. He has earned a well-deserved reputation as a champion of those who historically have been underserved. It's my honor to introduce
Chancellor, appreciate that very much, and let me at the outset join with the Chancellor in thanking the Center for Community Dialogue. Thank you very much. The work you're doing in this community is essential as we strive to be a more civil, understanding, and tolerant community. And I always believe that those are the hallmarks of Tucson and Southern Arizona, and we just need to remind people that that's our legacy in this part of the world. Also, the Tucson Black Chamber, as always, thank you very much. NAACP and Pima Community College for promoting, I really believe, a very necessary conversation on the reality of race in this country and in this community. A necessary conversation, and sometimes an uncomfortable conversation. A conversation that requires, I think, above all, honesty. Not stereotypes, not misinformation, but honesty. And race, and the often used term of race relations, is a concept that evokes and continues to evoke a conflict of emotions in this country. Those emotions are rooted in history, some tortured history, and some very uplifting history. The tortured history that we all know of, and not ignore, because that historical context is what helps guide the conversation that we need to have. Whether it was the Chinese Exclusionary Act, Congress kicked out Americans from this country, the incarceration and concentration camp of Japanese Americans during World War II, slavery, Jim Crow, the fact that it took a Supreme Court decision to allow Native Americans in this state of ours to be able to vote in their elections, the denial of women's right to vote until there was an amendment to that. And that history continues to be the concept that moves part of the conversation. But I think part of the conversation has to be balanced with the uplifting parts of this history of race in this country. Rosa Parks, no, not going to move, sparked the deepest social change that we've had in this country in generations and generations. The Filipino farm workers that defied Cesar Chavez and said, no, we're going to go on strike. We're not going to wait another year. And Cesar and the rest of the union joined those Filipino farm workers, and thus began the Great Strike, and thus began the latest boycott, and thus began a whole movement of self-identification and progress for the lowest workers in this country, but also affecting the Latino community in a very, very profound way. I think that's an uplifting moment. I think the Civil Rights Act is an uplifting moment. And anything that has occurred that's been uplifting, that reaffirms this nation. You know, this nation is not perfect. The key to this great country of ours is the striving for perfection, the effort to be better. From many there are one. And so the legal issues before Supreme Courts, whether it's Brown versus the Board of Education, whether it's Lau versus Nichols, whether it's the Civil Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, those were all to reaffirm those values of this nation and those constitutional protections and freedoms that have to be extended to every American. And so, as we look at the tortured part of our history that helps define the concept, let's look at the uplifting moments in this history that help define this nation. You know, and I think when we talk about relations and race, let's also talk about it in terms of reality. Very, very important reality. Reality that by 2050, this country of ours is going to be a majority-minority country. That shift will happen. That over 40% of the young people in the state of Arizona under 18 are of color. That 1 out of 2 babies starting preschool this year in the state of Arizona are of color. And so this demographic reality causes some division, and it causes some consequences, political and social. How many times I've heard from people that are looking at this reality, this demographic shift in our nation, and say, this is not my country. But the fact of the matter is, it is. And the fact of the matter is that efforts, whether it's social and political, to retrench us in a time that we have already been through, are doomed to failure. And whether it is 1070 and that aberration upon not only the state of Arizona, but now waiting for a Supreme Court decision, potentially upon this country, the elimination of certain types of ethnic studies because it is feared as a concept and it's used as a political weapon. Profiling, voter suppression, stand your ground laws, laws that restrict freedoms and disproportionately identify a group of people. Those are not the laws that this nation has built its foundation on. So we know those consequences. We're dealing with them as we speak. But there is another way. And when I say those are doomed to failure, they are. And one interesting statistic that I found, 11% of the people that identified themselves in the census this time around identified themselves as multiracial. And I mention that because that's also a reality in this great country of ours. And we know there's another way. And the other way is what's happening today. to talk in an honest, forthright way, and to honestly confront the topic that has this historical context that I talked about, but also has within this conversation that we're having today, the reality of what the future of this community and this country is going to be. And, you know, the quest to be colorblind as a country is not a futile quest. You know, Mona and I try to raise our babies to look at the world that way. So it's not a futile quest, but it is necessary, and it requires that we not look beyond our differences as people, and accept those differences as strengths in this diverse and vibrant society that we are, and that we are rapidly becoming as a nation. And to talk about what those differences are, and more importantly, as part of the topic, to talk about what unifies us as a people in this nation. I've always looked at America as a mosaic, a fabric that's put together from different parts, a nation built on involuntary and voluntary migration to this nation. A nation that all the parts make this beautiful tapestry. And I think we have to look at that tapestry as a strength for this nation. That as we shift, that this is not a shift that America should fear. We're not losing anything. Because the vibrancy and the strength of this nation is going to depend on those 1 out of 2 babies going into that precinct. The future and the peace and the security of this country is going to depend on the contributions that they make. And so as we go forward, investing a solid and honest conversation on race, to talk about differences, to talk about what bothers me. You know? I hate it when somebody's talking Spanish next to me and I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It makes me crazy. And to talk about those honest societal quirks that we all have, but at the same time what unifies us. If you dig deep enough, the contributions that all people have made, people of color have made to this country, sacrifices in war, sacrifices in peace, sacrifices of hard labor, sacrifices of playing by the rules, having discipline, and contributing to the vibrancy and the growth of this nation. I'm very proud. I tell people I come from a part of the world that we exemplify tolerance and we're passionate about everything we do. And I think that passion, when it comes to the issue of race, can be a passion that can lead us to a better future. It can lead us to talk about it. It can lead us to defend diversity. And it can lead us to say, yeah, there's a difference, but that difference is okay. That difference adds to the strength. It makes the fabric impregnable, and it makes the fabric strong. So I'm optimistic, not because there's a demographic shift. I'm optimistic because we're having these kinds of discussions about a topic that you can't ignore, and a topic that requires both the intelligence of each and every one of us, the tolerance of each and every one of us, and on occasion, the defiance of each and every one of us. Thank you very much.